your task is Asbuilt, which basically means as it was built, or the existing structure and surroundings. Now I'll color code something red. If you're going to go to the site, one of the first things you should notice are the structurals. Structurals such as the columns. The beams are okay, but we need everything first in plan view or top view to see the overall layout. So once you get this, you have to measure them from center to center. Why? Because when the structural engineer does the structural analysis, he wants to calculate the weight or the loads based off of the center or the centroids, such as the beams and the columns. That means later on you even need to know the roof trusses, how it was laid out and built. But of course, not every time you can see the roof framing. That's why the best thing to do is to start with the overall. We go like this. You do what's seen first, overall, and then you can go to the structural, electrical, plumbing, and more interior details, because these things down here, the details take so much time to do as compared to the overall plan or the overall map. So just think of it as you're making a map for a game. Okay, so when you're going to go to the site, of course, the first thing you might see is the front elevation and the exterior perspective. Say, for example, this is the site. There might be a slope that goes down here. So the first thing you do, if you are outside, are the exteriors. Now, exteriors should be a bit easier because you can just take photos, and based on those photos, you can see the dimensions of the overall. And also, you can assume floor to ceiling and floor to floor height and floor to building height limit, okay? Especially the openings as well. Now, when you're going to measure exteriors, for example, you have a plan like this. First, get the overall dimension from what you can see outside, and then get the next dimension of wall divisions or corners. So you can do like this, for example, only, okay? So what is the overall dimension? And once you go inside, of course, you will not be able to measure exactly the thickness of the wall from outside. If you are inside, let's say here, you have to measure the inner dimensions. But of course, as I mentioned, these things take time. So if you're going to measure from here to here, just put the dimension. But before measuring all of them, it's better to lay out all the spaces that you see first. For example, you see a bedroom there with an opening, you see a comfort room, you see another bedroom that opens the other way, you see another room. These things, you have to draw them first before you start measuring. Why? Because if you start measuring things, example, you start measuring this one, and then you draw it, and you start measuring this one, and then you draw it, it will take so much time, and your dimensions might mismatch with the columns we saw earlier. So while you're measuring the interiors, you can already see where the columns are being aligned. Okay? And because you have the dimension from center to center, when you get the dimension of one post, and you can assume that there are many others with the same dimension. And then later on, you can go towards the details, such as the clearance between the two posts or the wall. Now for windows, do not worry so much. Let's make it blue. If you have a window here, just do that. Lay it out abstractly first. Why? Because you're doing this for as-built, meaning to say it might be for the permits. We usually have window tags, right? They're usually hexagonal. And in there, we can put the detail of the window. The only time we should measure the window openings like this is if it's necessary for our construction. For example, the concrete hollow blocks and then the opening. But we don't need this yet for the permit because it's for the actual construction sample. So when you do your as-built, lay out everything first, as I mentioned, from bigger to smaller. So the bigger one says by doing the layout of pages. First floor, second floor, third floor, or roof. And then start by drawing the overall, for example. Then the second thing will go for the interiors. Just start laying them out. But do not try to measure each and every single crevice or corner if you do not have enough time. And then look for the structurals. And while you are walking, of course, inside, you can go for another round, look at the ceiling. You can lay out the lighting or power, because you need this to make the electrical blueprint, right? And for plumbing, because you cannot see all of the pipes, highlight first where are the wet areas, such as toilet and bath, fixture locations. Let's say there's a kitchen here, the sink, and then look for the septic tank. Maybe it's around here, left side. That means the pipes might be going here, okay? Usually you will be able to see this outside if the pipes are like exposed going down. But if not, at least you know where the septic tank is and also the water tank. So this is the source and this is the exit. For electricals, you also need to know the source. Let's say this is the service drop, electrical pole going to the house. And then where is the panel box? And if there is a panel box in every floor, or only one for all the floors. So those are the necessary things you need first if you don't have enough time. Now, as I mentioned also, if you are relying on photos, you can actually use some techniques for inferencing your body. For example, for me, if this is me, and I raise my hand like this, when I measured my arm, of course it differs from person to person, when I measured my arm, I saw that this one was around 1 meter. Okay? And then I saw that my one finger, when bent, was around 1 inch. Now I do not need these small increments yet, but I also saw that my foot was exactly 1 foot or 30 centimeters. So if I have a tile that is 30 by 30, this is exactly where my foot is. Okay. Then I saw the room and I couldn't go everywhere inside. Let's say somebody's sleeping there, but I saw that the floors were like 30 by 30 because my foot was like this long. And I can start counting the number of tiles in the grid and then multiply them, okay, to get the estimated amount of tiles and the estimated width and length. Now that's just one technique, but of course you can also verify that later on. Other times when you have a door, our doors are known in the hardware to be 7 feet, or that is around, if you times 3, 2.1 meters, okay, times 0.3. And you as a person, you know that your height is usually measured in feet and inches. You can say that you are 5 foot flat. If you're 5 foot flat, then that means there are 2 feet before getting the 7 feet. And you can just imagine that 1 foot is one ruler. Remember the ruler, it looks like this, has 12 inches and 30 centimeters. That's 0.3 or 1 foot. But because we are measuring things by metric system, we are only using this one to inference or relate to our body proportion or ergonomics, or what you call that, anthropometrics. Now, because the door is exactly 2.1, remember that there are door jambs. So the opening is not actually the door opening where the door panel is only, but the opening of the wall, you can assume 0.05. So from floor finish line to the opening of the wall is 2.15. Okay. Then assume as well that there are tiles here that go around also 0.05. So the whole opening from the slab is 2.2. Just assume. So when you're doing SketchUp modeling and you're modeling from the concrete slab to the door opening, we usually use this one. But if you're measuring from the tile or the floor finish, because of the concrete topping, we usually use this one. Now, where do we use this? We can actually see photos and during the Asbuilt visit of windows, and we can see that they are aligned with the door. So we can assume that this is a 2.15 meter height from the floor finish line because you cannot see the slab yet. And windows by standard are usually 0.90 or 3 feet. Okay? So now you can assume 2.15 minus 0.90 is the height of the window, right? And then you can just measure this one later on. This is for things that you take with your camera and you do not have the tape measure yet to measure, or you're not allowed to go inside yet. And then if you go higher, let's say from 2.15 going up here, bottom of the beam, okay? Beam, bottom. Now you can see the beam might be around like 30 centimeters. And this is the post. This is the floor finish line. So you can now assume that from the door height and the remaining clearance, you can get the height from the floor finish line till the bottom of the beam. Sometimes this one looks like 30, but there's actually a slab up there. So it might be 35 in reality or 40. Okay? But these things will come later on for your structurals. This is needed for the structural analysis. So the last tip will be for using plywood as a reference or inference. Inference is using something else to measure something else. Okay? Plywood is usually 1.2 by 2.4 meters. In feet, this is 4 by 8 feet. Because 4 times 0.3 is 1.2, and 8 times 0.3 is 2.4. So 12 and 24. Okay? So plywood. Now, this is not only for plywood. Other types of materials are also sold like this. Phenolic boards are sold like this. Some acrylic glasses are sold in this size. Now, because you know that your height is more than 4 feet, you're actually like 5 feet, then you know that the plywood should be a bit shorter than you. But wait, that 4 feet is pahiga, like that, if you're like this, I mean. Okay? So you know that this plywood is 8 feet, and you know that the door is 7 feet. So if you see that the door is bigger than the plywood, then you know now that it has to be 8 feet or more. For another reference, 10 feet is the height of the ring of a basketball net, basketball ring, okay? And also in the Bible, it's Goliath's height. I think so. So these are just inferences and references. If you couldn't measure everything in much time, let's say, for example, you just went for a short ocular inspection, at least you know when you're going to draft based on the photos that you took, you can actually put the initial height and then go back for another day to measure it, okay? And you can better fix your as-built. And if you put an X over a place, then you can find this is the center or the middle. So this can be like lights, lighting outlets. You can also know by the standard mounting fixture or height of the convenience outlets, maybe also the height of switches. That's why you always refer to your code and actual site It's hard to draft when you're just in front of the computer without research. You always need to use your research, and it can be by immersion or actual site construction and supervision. Okay, so don't rely on everything just being, what they call spoon fed. You actually have to spoon feed yourself.